Hello everyone. So today's episode is about the FTX drama, or I should say the FTX collapse now. And it's probably easy to say that this is the FTX saga has been the biggest drama that crypto has ever seen in the last decade, even surpassing that of Luno, I would say. And it was almost like a Bollywood or a Hollywood style script that was written, and it was played out in two parts. And I covered this in two parts in Tamil, and I'll do the same thing in English as well. So it's a story about, in this episode we'll focus on what happened between FTX and Binance till that point, and then in the second part we'll carry forward from that point. So just as two-part stories. And as usual, disclaimer and warning, I'm not a financial advisor or investment expert, and none of my videos are for financial advice. And I'm active on Twitter at the chennai to London. That's my handle. And not only me, you can get quicker updates in crypto, especially in the finance sector. You can get quicker updates if you're on Twitter. So let's start with the climax on part one, right? So even when I made this video in Tamil, this was the point I actually stopped the part one, and then part two played out after this point. So the part one, the climax that we started out was Binance was going to acquire FTX completely. So it was such a shock to everyone that the scale of the acquisition, the scale of what we are talking about is that Binance, the world's number one exchange, and FTX, world's number two exchange, and they were going to take over or fully acquire FTX because of a liquidity crunch that was happening or that was boiling over, right? So it's quite significant. It's basically that point in time was a milestone moment. So what happened? Like at that point, the entire world was thinking that there were basically two heroes or two main leads, right? One was CZ Changpeng Zhou, which is the owner of CEO and owner and CEO of Binance.com, the leading crypto exchange in the world. We've talked about him a few times in our videos. He's a very influential figure in crypto and the richest crypto billionaires in the world by far. Even in fact, for Elon Musk to buy Twitter for 44 billion, Binance had given 500 million out of that 44 billion to Elon Musk to buy Twitter. So they also had a hand in buying Twitter, I would say. So that gives you something about the influence of this person in the crypto world and in general. And then Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF as he was called, he's the founder and CEO of FTX.com, one of the fastest growing crypto exchanges in the world, and it's also the number 2 ranked crypto exchange, next only to Binance. And he had a lot of influence and is known for his strategy to take over other struggling crypto exchanges. He's bought a lot of struggling crypto exchanges for small companies, and he's grown FTX into the huge entity that it is. And he also manages another entity called Alamada Research, which again is one of the biggest center points of this controversy. We'll talk about it later. It's a crypto trading firm. Right, so there's always this constant debate in crypto about people versus them. Them is like governance and governments and governing bodies and so on, right? So Binance, and there's an angle to it. So Binance and FTX, there's a big history behind it. In fact, in 2019, when FTX was started, when SBF was launching FTX, Binance was already a big exchange by the time, and CZ supported Sam and invested heavily in FTX. Billions of dollars of investments were made at that point of time in FTX by Binance, and they got the FTT token, which was FTX's own token. They had a large portion of it allocated to Binance because of this reason, and this became a big part of the play at a later point in time. We'll talk about that as well. But that is where it started. That is how it started. They started as friends. Binance actually helped FTX to start and to grow. And fast forward, Binance started in 2017, still the leading crypto exchange by a huge margin. It's about 5 years. And FTX started only in 2019 and has grown so rapidly and aggressively that they are number 2 ranked exchange in the world. So up until a few days back, if you go to CoinMarketCap or any listing website and see, you will see FTX is number 4. But that's practically because the spot trading volume, spot trading revenue, and the spot trading and the derivatives trading are shown separately in most websites, right? And that's because not everyone has both the products. But if you see, FTX is number 4 in both, and the number 2 and number 3 are nowhere in sight in terms of the spot and derivatives. So there are some exchanges which are exclusively spot and some exchanges exclusively derivatives or do not have the volume. FTX combined volume of spot and derivative make it very clearly the number 2 spot in terms of the overall volume, I would say. And also, despite that, Binance is still about 10 times the size of FTX, spot and derivatives combined. Binance is still 10 times the size of FTX, but it's still probably a point of concern at some point for CZ, having a rapidly growing organization. Another point of concern is the amount of clout that SBF had with regards to politics. He was heavily getting involved with substantial donation in the US midterm elections. There's this constant debate that I talked about was the people versus government or regulating bodies, and personalities like Vitalik Buterin and these people are seen as people who are on the side of people or decentralization. They're talking about crypto as a concept is about decentralization. It's about giving power to the people. And SBF, however, has recent times sided with the government or with the them part, and because he's made significant donations to US politics, both to Democrats and Republicans, there are two major parties of US, he's been donating heavily to both sides. So whoever becomes a senator, whoever comes to power, he's still going to be in ties with them, right? So that kind of alienated him from the rest of the crypto world, because it was seen as something corrupt, I would say, the fact that he was donating heavily for his own benefits. And the biggest divide started, I would say, on October 19th, when SBF clearly posted a crypto regulation framework, or his view on crypto regulation framework, on what should be the digital industry standards for crypto assets, right? So, and you have to remember, this is a man who's been siding with the US politics and with people in power, and whatever he was going to propose as a crypto regulation framework was obviously going to be taken by the lawmakers to the next step and would have become crypto regulation, or probably will still become crypto regulation. But what was so controversial about this crypto regulation was that he talked about, it's a lengthy thread, and there's also a separate white paper on the ftx.com website, so which you can go and see. I'll give a link to it. But primarily the problem that he's talking about is regulating crypto so much that he wants to take it away from DeFi and make it only about centralized, where everybody is trying to move to a Web 3.0 or a decentralized ecosystem, and he wants to again actually get control of crypto and become more like a centralized controlled system. So, and that's where the backlash from the crypto industry started. Pretty much everybody was saying that you should be really ashamed of even proposing something like this. You're taking everything that was done in crypto in the last 12 years and you want to take it away, completely strip it, and make it go back to the monetary system that it was before crypto, right? So, and it was a complete backlash. I don't even think there was probably more than 1% of the crypto industry that supported his framework or said that there's anything good about it, except SBF. Nobody had backed that framework, or nobody said that from a crypto perspective that framework was good. And the reason is because if you think about traditional banking and crypto, the fundamental difference is that in case of crypto, you are in total control of or you can be in total control of your assets in crypto DeFi if you hold it in non-custodial wallets. Unlike traditional banking, where the banks control most of your money and you can get logged out of your own money. It has happened in many countries where you deposited money into your own bank, and in some of the European banks, for example, the banks have collapsed so much that people cannot even get their own money. I mean, we've seen videos about a gunman going to a bank and robbing the bank just to withdraw his own money from his own account, and he had to hold people at gunpoint to get the money out of the bank. That's how banks can control, that's how much banks can control your money in a centralized ecosystem in traditional banking. So access to decentralized finance, again, US apart, a lot of these decentralized finances is available without any geographical restrictions. You can transfer in near speeds, and you don't need to wait for the government, or you don't need to wait for another third party. They're all permissionless, and that's the main advantage. And if a government wants to block your funds because you're voicing opinions, like in dictatorship or in countries where there's no true democracy, if the government wants to block your assets or funds just because you're voicing a different opinion, they can easily do it with traditional banking. But that's not entirely possible in crypto. And as a collective industry, there has been events where they've blocked scammers and hackers, but that's a collective agreement between a lot of parties and not just one party deciding that it needs to be blocked. SBF framework was seen against all of this, right? And that's why he was siding up with the others, I would say. The notable clash, one of the probably the pinnacle clashes of this was a person called Erik. Erik in moneystate.com, in his article, he wrote a very critical article about this framework, and he tore it apart, literally tore it apart piece by piece. He exposed the fact that the mindset that SBF was operating with was anti-people mindset, right? He was trying to control people, and by controlling people, he was trying to control their crypto as well, taking them back to the governance structure that it was, and doing so much damage. This framework, the proposal of this framework was doing so much damage to everything that was being built for crypto till this point of time. And Erik, not only in this article, but there was also a video, an AMA discussion that happened, where in that interview, Erik basically tore apart SBF and kind of exposed him. That's where we come to the second part of the story, which is the FTT token. In this episode, right, there's one more part to it, which is the FTT token. So FTT token, while all this was going on, there was a concern that was building on the FTT token. The FTT token is a utility token of the FTX exchange. Now you can compare it with the BTR token of Bitrue or WRS token of WazirX, for example, but with a lot more utility than that, where you get trading rebates. Trading fee discount is probably the biggest advantage that you get from derivative market trading, because in derivative market trading, the trading fees for pro traders could be in thousands of dollars. So using FTT, holding FTT, gives them hundreds and hundreds of dollars in terms of savings on a daily basis, which means that pro traders really like the fact that they can go and trade using this FTT token for their fees perspective and save a huge amount in the fees. And it also gave the FTX exchange a lot of investment money, because they were able to sell this FTT token for investment money and make money out of it, and they were able to use it as collateral, borrow money from it. So they were basically using it like primarily like how the Luna ecosystem was using Luna token, right, to make money out of it. That's how they were seeing it. The big difference between a token like BNB or CRO with FTT is that BNB is also a blockchain fee token. It is as part of BNB Smart Chain. It has become a big enabler of decentralized finance and decentralized finance revenue. So BNB is no longer just an exchange token. It's no longer a centralized token. It is kind of becoming more and more on a daily basis the DeFi token for the BNB's blockchain. So despite the brutal bear market, FTT token had not been impacted so much. It was maintaining at about $25 to $30, and this week, or in that week where the collapse had happened, it plummeted to about $4.5 and continued to plummet, and it plummeted more than 90% at one point in time. So on 9th of November, when I was putting this whole content together, the market capital had dropped from nearly $3.2 billion to $650 million and dropping. So why did that happen? So what was the connection? So this is where the Alamada research comes into picture. So FTX is the crypto exchange for spot and mainly derivatives trading, and that's where their main revenue comes from. But however, SBF also owned a firm called as Alamada Research, which is basically a trading firm. Now, apart from the fact that he owned both FTX exchange and Alamada Research, not much was clear between the relationship of the two entities, like how much of Alamada Research's money is in FTX, how much of FTX money is in Alamada Research. It wasn't very clear. And that was a key point to understand that while a crypto exchange makes its revenue from spot trading or derivative trading, it should not take unnecessary risks in crypto like a trading firm, right? So it's very important to keep it separate, because a crypto exchange in terms of the strict principles, it should never trade, but that's not the case. There's no law against it, and that's what SBF was doing. So Alamada Research has used FTT token from FTX as a collateral a few times, which is natural. They might have borrowed it or bought it and used it as collateral, but it wasn't clear the extent to which it relied on FTT, to be very precise. And on 2nd of November, when all this was going on, the balance sheet of Alamada Research was leaked to Coindesk, and this is probably what triggered everything from that point on time. And this was a very important key article which talked about how much of the $14.6 billion of Alamada's assets on paper, on document, was relying on FTT token, which is not a stable coin, which is an illiquid coin. Basically, it could fall down any moment. This is exactly the same problem that happened with Luna, where it was relying on a token whose price can fall at any point in time, right? So This much of reliance on FTT token by a trading firm on their balance sheet was completely unexpected. A trading firm which had $14.6 billion, a huge portion of it was FTT tokens and not enough in stable coins. So as a trading firm or an investment firm, if people try to withdraw their assets and stablecoin at the same time, the balance sheet exposed so much of a weakness that the over-reliance on FTT token could result in an exact Luna-like situation. And if the FTT value started falling, it's going to result in a cascading effect, or it's going to result in an exact collapse similar to the Terra or Luna situation. So bank run is what is called basically, and bank run is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I would say. So what is a bank run? Bank run is basically, we as a public, we deposit money in our banks, and the banks then loan the money into as loans and various products to the public. They don't keep all the money themselves. It's very clear that they don't always maintain. So if 1,000 of us have put like 1 billion into the bank, there'll probably never be 1 billion in the bank. There'll probably be $500 million or maybe less than that, because that's how the market works. The bank never retains. It's not like a safety deposit where they're maintaining all our money. But if people want to withdraw their money, there's probably enough liquidity if a rational amount of people are withdrawing money. But if there's a panic and if everybody tries to withdraw money from the bank, the more and more people try to withdraw, the more and more the bank will run out of liquidity, and the more the bank will start collapsing. So it's a loop, and all it needs is just a viable panic and a spark, and it will create this loop, and the banks will start failing. Which is why in countries like UK, for example, the FCA says that up to £85,000 of your money is protected in a bank, and they give you guarantee that 85,000 of your pounds can be withdrawn. But if you keep more than that, then there is no guarantee even from the bank that it can be withdrawn. And this amount is much, much lesser in the other countries, where if you keep money in the bank, like for example, even if you keep £1 million, you probably not even get 10% of that as a guarantee from the bank or the government to say that you can take the money out. That's what is written in the terms and conditions. This is exactly what a bank run is. And this is where Binance and CZ stepped in after the November 2nd article, that as part of post-exit risk management learning from Luna, he said that he was using Luna as an example and said, we do not want to continue the risk, and we want to liquidate our nearly $2 billion worth of FTT. At the point in time, this was the FTT that they had received for the funding that they gave to FTX in 2019, if you remember, where they were a supporting partner or investment partner with FTX as a launch, right? So this tokens were always with Binance, and he used that moment to say that we're going to liquidate, and it was quite clear, because FTT, after the November 2nd article, there was an element of risk that started being exposed, and there was a Luna-like scenario that was potentially possible that was pointed out, right? So he said we're going to liquidate it, and that kind of triggered the bank run. That kind of triggered the Coindesk article and the liquidation tweet from CZ. Both of it triggered the bank run of FTT, or the collapse of FTT as a token, FTT as a token. And CZ was probably right in saying that, because the risk was clearly highlighted by the Alamada researchers' leaked balance sheet, and the over-reliance of FTT as a token by Alamada research was probably never so alarmingly brought up into public light till that point in time. So, and also he used the fact very clearly that we won't pretend to make love after divorce, which means that he was talking about the regulatory framework that SBF was hiding with, and he combined both these stories into one narrative at this point. And till this point, the two stories that we were talking about were running in parallel, and this is where it started combining together. And what happened was that immediately after that point, Caroline, who's the CEO of Binance, who we've now looked at all the articles after that and look how immature she is, but at that point she was probably the only person who made some mature remarks. So she said Alamada Research will happily buy the FTT tokens from you at a OTC rate of about $22. So FTT was about $25, and she didn't want to trigger a panic, and she wanted to have a OTC deal. So if Binance had sold privately to Alamada Research, then there wouldn't have been a public panic, and there would have been a public panic selling. But unfortunately, it was beyond repair at this point, and the backend had already been triggered. So immediately from that point onwards, Alamada Research was sending stable coins to FTX, and they were getting millions and millions of dollars. In 24 hours, the amount of money that was being withdrawn out of Alamada Research was about $257 million. That's how much money that they were selling and how much assets that they were selling and withdrawing from protocols, paying even high penalties where like fixed deposits were being broken. So like we said, the intent of CZ was very clear that he wasn't in full favor of supporting Alamada or FTX for that matter. And he also very clearly said that, the biggest lesson that we've learned from Luna was that never use your own token as a collateral. And if you're running a crypto exchange or crypto business, do not borrow money and use your capital. You have to use a large reserve. You have to have a big reserve of money. You're not going to be sitting at an illiquid funds at any point of time that if somebody is starting to withdraw, then you're scrambling for selling your assets to just give the money back, right? So this could happen to Binance, but then from the perspective of Binance, they have practically covered this better than any other exchange. They don't trade, they don't borrow as an exchange, they never borrow, they don't overuse BNB as a collateral. In fact, they've completely taken BNB into a smart chain blockchain enabler and instead of an exchange token. So, and they have probably more reserves than any other exchange in terms of proof, and they have shown it as well a few times. So he was very clear, and he wasn't letting it go. So he was explaining that this is what the scenario is, and this is what FTX has not done. All of this that Binance had done, FTX has not done. And then come to the climax and what we started with. He said that, okay, now FTX has asked for our help, and we will now go into a non-binding agreement, and we will fully acquire FTX.com. This is what he tweeted on that particular day on November 10th. And this is where we will stop this part, because Binance is one of the largest exchange, showed intent to buy FTX, and this is how the story played out at this point of time. And like I said, on that point itself, if this was a plan from the perspective of that day, FTX was taking over so many companies, was behind the scenes, it was minting FTT tokens. Binance must have known all of this, traced all of this, and if there was just a takeover attempt, then yes, they could have waited for the opportune moment and revealed his political stand, his regulations, and he was being branded as one of them. The balance sheet of Alamada Research was leaked at an opportune moment, and combined with the fact that immediately CZ announced the selling of FTT token using Luna as an example, triggering the bank run, triggering the collapse of FTT price, and triggering the FTT price, he knew, or everyone knew at that point, would collapse the position of FTX and Alamada Research. And so there are only two choices that SBF was left with at the point: either go bankrupt or sell the FTX business to Binance. So the acquisition deal was offered, and this played out like entirely like a hostile takeover till that point, right? And that's where the twist comes in, and the twist is going to start mainly in the second part of this episode, or the second episode for this saga or the story. But the reality, the crash was much worse than Luna. In case of Luna, the signals were very clear. Sensible investors stayed completely away from Luna or Dokon. For example, in our channel 50 videos, not once we mentioned about the Luna ecosystem or the Luna token or the UST stablecoin. We've talked about stablecoins, and we've kept completely away from UST as a stablecoin. Never even regarded UST as a stablecoin. So it was very clear that Luna was going to crash, and Do Kwon was basically fooling everyone in terms of what he was offering. But there were no such warnings or danger signs for FTX or Alamada Research. They were probably very minor, if at all they were, right? And nobody expected this magnitude of failure from FTX and Alamada. So if even if CA went on to save FTX, it was very clear that he was not going to save the FTT token. So Alamada Research as a trading firm have borrowed heavily from several lenders using FTT as a collateral. If that collateral goes to zero, then all the lenders have a useless collateral. They cannot get their funds back. They cannot get their loans back. So a lot of these investors, retail investors, trade investors have been trading and investing in Alamada Research. All of their positions are going to go to zero. And these are not just trade positions. They are leveraged trade positions, which means that there are millions and millions of dollars. So the impact of this crash was going to be very high. It was very clear at that point of time. And so Bitcoin experienced probably the biggest ever crash in the recent times, going from $21,000 to about $15,700 in just less than 2 days. In about 36 hours, it crashed from 21,000 to 15,700. 22% crash that has seldom been seen in Bitcoin, and it practically liquidated a lot of the leverage trading positions, which caused a massive cascade of the other assets. The reason why Bitcoin's crash, a significant crash like that in Bitcoin, crashes the entire crypto industry is because it's one asset that moves very slowly and up and down, right? And a lot of people have collateral positions or leverage positions, which means that if you buy a leverage position on Bitcoin at $20,000, you expect to be liquidated at $18,000, which is an event that happens very, very rarely. And when the Bitcoin's price starts crashing, people sell all of their assets, dump all of their assets to get liquidity in USDT or USDC, to lower their liquidation threshold from 18,000 to 17,000. And when it is continuing, they'll keep selling even more to lower it from 17 to 16, and it goes into a spiral. That's why the entire market goes into a crash. And at this point, with everything that was playing out, I was already at a loss for words. But the number of parties that was getting wrecked in the bloodbath, and then the worst bloodbath that was happening, it was already chaos. It was already too much. But the biggest shock was yet to come. That is what we will continue in the next part, because this didn't end here. What felt like the biggest event of crypto, or the biggest twist in crypto, only got worse, and nobody saw what was coming after this point. And that's what we'll talk about in our next episode, part 2 of this FTS saga and FTS story. Stay tuned.